You're listening to New York's only home for Reefer Madness. Every week, we'll explore the unique perspective of cannabis in the global hub of commerce and culture. Hear the insights, stories, challenges, and successes of those blazing a path from Brooklyn to Buffalo and everywhere in between. I'm your host, Kaelan coming to you from the Green Valley of Opportunity, Binghamton, New York. This is the Empire State of Cannabis. Welcome today. We have a very special show for you. We have Eric Krohn, one of my personal mentors and a mentor for CSG. He's a director of incubation programming at Binghamton University. Thanks so much for coming, Eric.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm actually really excited to be here and quite honored, especially a day after the giant dropping of your biggest news yet. Very special. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and so yesterday we launched Empire Standard, yesterday being Wednesday or Thursday the 18th. And so this episode will air on Monday. So thanks for coming on. Why don't you explain what that means, Director of Incubation Programming at Binghamton University? And for those that don't know, there's actually a physical Southern Tier, or the Koffman Southern Tier Incubator in Binghamton.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. In short, my job is to provide mentorship and educational programming to startups. And that can be startups that are coming from the university itself, whether that's Binghamton University or SUNY Broome or really any university. We've gotten some out of Ithaca. As well as, trying to provide these services to folks in our community, or folks that we're finding from other states that we actually are able to bring into New York to progress their businesses. And what we do, much like most incubators, is put together mentors that come from different backgrounds, a building that is technologically advanced in some sort of way, whether it's brand new meeting spaces or the video aspects, and the networking abilities, whether it's for pitches or to meet other entrepreneurs. And we try to find the best mix of all these things and give that sort of structure, if you will, to anyone that's willing to join our membership. And so it's really open to anyone. Our clean energy division actually has companies from, I believe, 3 different countries. And my half, the non-clean energy side of the incubator, we have one company from New Zealand, actually, that's now housed in the incubator. So it's an amazing experience. Every day is different, and every business is different, just like the people that are there.
Yeah, exactly. And we spent 2 years in the Koffman Southern Tier Incubator, benefiting from those things that you mentioned, actually being there in a physical space with other businesses, but also having the access to the programming, the networking events, which are on hold obviously right now, at the Koffman, and it was a really special place. But you do even more, so you go a step further, and you're known for breaking down people's businesses and maybe also their emotional well-being at the same time, right? But that's so important because, and we talk about this in the hemp space and a lot with my other guests, is understanding the customer and understanding your business, understanding your niche, and not trying to do too much, right? So how does that relate to what you're already telling business, and what's some of your experiences with businesses that might not be in the hemp space, the cannabis industry, for being successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. So my background is not having an MBA. I didn't come from a family business. I actually started as a chef, CIA graduated chef from Hyde Park, and later became a dietitian. My point here is, I learned by making a lot of mistakes, by just taking initiatives to try things. And it started from wanting to make a few extra dollars when I was in college, actually. I started a company making restaurant training manuals and made these laminated color things. I used to tell people, my mother could walk into your restaurant and open up this training manual and be able to not only replicate the exact same taste that you do every night, but it would look exactly the same each and every time. And that just led to more and more learning and understanding it's not easy. I mean, you've done this multiple times now. There's a lot of places where we can make mistakes. There's a lot of people out there that might be saboteurs. There's a lot of people out there that could end up really being your best your key partner or asset. So really, what I do, or my ability to get granular with companies, really comes from this idea that I didn't start, let's say, with having this educational background about business models and other such. So for me, it really required me to break a business down to its smallest aspects and then question, is that right? Does it make sense? Is there other changes that we should be considering? And that's kind of actually how I built the foundation of my mentorship in business, because it's really understanding each of those tiny little pieces and trying to improve upon them. Nowadays, I've really gotten into the business model canvas and business modeling patterns, and so we're able to take that to a whole new level. But I think at its core, anyone that's trying to start a business or expand a business or maintain a business, you need to understand every inch of it, every aspect, every groan or whatever from your customers that you're trying to fix. And until you have that sort of deep understanding, you're really just flapping your arms in a pool.
So it's almost as if you don't know the business, if you're not hands-on in every part of it, you can't really succeed. And I wonder if we're seeing real life examples play out of that with a lot of these large MSOs, where you have people from private equity come and they're managing and they're trying to run a cannabis business by plugging in the right pieces almost, and saying, well, it should happen the right way, right? But they don't actually have any understanding of the operational skills and experience that it takes to run a cannabis business. And I think we see that all the time. But you mentioned something, mistakes, and you said, mistakes. But how important are mistakes, though?
Yeah, great. I always, thought of, like your gym high school sort of experience, or maybe elementary school. You never really learn to play kickball better when you're on the winning team.
Yeah.
Right? It's usually the second place team that's really striving to be number one and made mistakes, or maybe didn't have the best, team aspect or whatever it is. It's all a buildup, and we have to constantly just work on improving ourselves or in every aspect of what we do in order to compete.
So how important, when you look at the hemp space, right, compared to clean energy, compared to all these other businesses that you see, whether it's service-based, product-based, right, new technologies that are going to save the world, does hemp excite you the way that it excites the casual observer?
Oh, very interesting. I feel like right now the hemp market has the issue to bring back to the culinary world that a lot of restaurants have, that I really have an issue with, and that's that restaurant that has this 14-page menu. And how can you actually master any of those dishes? How can you actually expect your stock to be fresh, or to actually be making money for the restaurant when you're trying to offer so much? And I feel like that's happening in our hemp world, which isn't necessarily bad. If I think if companies were out there testing different products, saying, okay, let's do a small batch of this, let's put it in this targeted market, let's run a study to see if it works, and if that's what's pushing a lot of products out there in the market, then I think that's very wise, because the companies shouldn't be losing a lot of money or time in that process. However, because I think so many of us were missing business models when we started businesses, or maybe they're not even familiar with business models, they're not taking the approach of testing, and they're actually just saying, let's just do it, and find the customers for it. And we've already learned that is not the proper way of conducting business.
So it's almost like everyone in the hemp industry is standing up Greek diners and trying to offer everything without actually understanding what they can cook best and what the customer wants, right? And this comes back to, and we talk a lot, I guess, is it doesn't matter what you think is right if no one wants it. Is there a need for it, right? And so, we dove into this with Mark Privatera on the hemp fiber industry. And it was really interesting because he said, well, we need about $250 million of investment in order to advance it where we see hemp as a carbon substitute and as a substitute for, as bioplastics. And I asked him, I said, is there a need for it? Is there a problem with importing carbon? And there isn't. And what my opinion, what we settled on is there's not a need for it until legislation in the government creates that need, right? In the hemp space. And do you see that, running the Clean Energy Incubator, do you see that too, where the government and regulations have such an important part to play? Because when you look at, New York, a lot of people look at New York and say, okay, for the political scene, the government's involved in everything, et cetera, et cetera. But then New York City, you have this dichotomy where New York City is also the model of capitalism for the entire world, right? An entire human civilization, you wanted some capitalism up, you'll go to New York City, right? So how does that exist? How do those two coexist? Because you need incentivization for the market to increase. And I think we see that in a lot of clean energy, but how might that work in the cannabis space?
Well, very interesting. So just a quick point on the clean energy. It's highly affected by government. When our federal government shut down a lot of international trade, our solar panel companies in the U.S. suffered greatly because now they're not able to have their panels manufactured overseas, which was what they needed to drive costs down in order to introduce it to our market. In New York State, we're extremely lucky. We have an administration and a governor and these different departments that, we've set rules. 2040, we want to be this huge place as far as clean energy. And so we've created NYSERDA that is this amazing entity that's actually promoting technological progression towards ways that these folks have been able to determine are the proper ways to gear clean energy. Oh. So basically, we don't want to waste money because there's 1,000 ways we can work on improving clean energy, but which ones are practical, which ones will actually help the citizens of New York State the most, because we're all paying for clean energy development in our utility bills if you look at the little fee in there. So how it relates to hemp, it's got to be almost identical in a way. So again, some of our assemblywomen and some of the other leaders in pushing hemp through New York, it wasn't pushing it in a way that's like, we can make money 1,000 different ways with this plant. A lot of them may not be socially scrupulous or whatever, but we could do it, and that would put more money in. And that wasn't the route that we took. From the start, it was all about sustainability, or starting with a farmer has to grow this plant. So why can't we make it sustainable for them? Because that's point A that all this stuff starts, unless you're bringing it in from out of state, which New York doesn't need to do or want to do.
Yeah.
So how could it help? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways. I think right now the guidance is probably the most important. All the things that your company is doing with our assemblywoman and the governor's office, just to say, how can we be a player on the national market or international market and not allow other economies to affect our hemp economy here? So how do we do that? Does it involve closing borders in some way? Does it involve, funneling money into certain things like, processing or manufacturing? Where do we push our grants? Where do we push the political attention so that it's not only able to self-support itself in our state, but we have to compete against everyone else? It's an open market. So I believe that we're definitely on the right path because we're spending the time to talk to all the other states, to talk to the industry leaders, and make an educated ruling on all these things.
And so you say guidance, and you're a state employee, and you're paid to give this guidance to businesses, right? And so, you've seen firsthand the barriers to entry for cannabis and hemp businesses, right? Yeah. And, so what has your experiences, really told you with how, whether it's the government or the community, needs to help reduce these barriers?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually become one of my favorite topics in the whole entrepreneurship or business world. I think right at this point we know who the customers are when we talk about who are the customers to a business or an industry. What we need most is defensible or proven business models.
Okay.
So we can't keep just pumping businesses out saying, let's just grow this plant and then we'll stuff it in a bottle and then we'll sell it to like everyone because everyone wants this and it benefits everyone. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
Companies compete on business models. They don't compete by products and services. So by finding that niche customer or by making small changes in your product, whether it's in quality or composition or whatever, it could be through a movement or maybe your company's known for donating money or maybe your company's known by being the employees are within some sort of group that you believe in. We need a business model that will compete against everyone else. And that's how we end up being successful.
As a business. So you need to find a niche in the marketplace.
A niche or just a business model. So what I mean by that is you have to prove 3 things to really have a business model.
Okay.
One of them is desirability. So that's going to be your value propositions to your customers.
Okay.
Right? The other one is feasibility. Do you have the resources to actually put out that product that people want? Can you actually manufacture those value propositions that you're offering to your customers? And then the last one is viability. So that one is cost to revenue. Are you actually making money?
Can you make money?
Doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just get into this, but they didn't actually map out the whole money chain.
Yeah.
The cost and everything associated just to get that, $40 for a bottle of tincture.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to find other revenue models and get creative with them. So maybe, you give tincture away for free, but, you're making money somewhere else in this, some sort of subscription model, whatever. But we need to actually have a business model pattern and it's okay to take ones from another company that's very successful and do that because that's a good place to start.
Yep.
But then you have to innovate on top of it.
Yep.
And that's how you compete and stay alive as a business.
So it's almost like reading a Forbes article isn't enough to then decide that you're going to jump in and quit your day job and jump into the hemp industry, right? So it's interesting because, we talk about academic backgrounds, lack thereof. I share a similar lack of academic background in the traditional business sense. Never took a business class in my life. But I think it's very important that you get hands-on experience, right? And so I think that's what's unique about you, right, is you're not a professor, you're not Dr. Krohn yet, right? And you have hands-on experience. So why don't you walk us through your entrepreneurial journey and how it even came and crossed over into hemp?
Yeah. Thanks. I almost sometimes feel like an artist, a painter or something where at this point, I keep starting companies because it's just something I have to do, like, painting something. But, outside of starting the service manuals to make money, I really started as an inventor.
Okay.
I'm really a creative person, and it probably stems from growing up and always wanting to be like my father. My father was a project manager for Lockheed, got to play with, the world's coolest technology.
Okay.
But, there's no way I'm getting into quantum math to end up where he was. So
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I'm sure most don't. So it was actually my mother's birthday party, and I wanted to make a hollandaise sauce to put on grilled asparagus. And I ruined the sauce. It overheated. And I know there's one way to get a hollandaise to re-emulsify after being reheated, but I still couldn't do it and ended up scrambling the eggs, and I was just devastated. And it was the first time that I started to actually think like how an inventor or an entrepreneur has to think. And that one thing is everything is wrong. Everything in the world is wrong. And that's not a negative thing.
No.
It means that there's room to improve.
Opportunity,
exactly. So what I saw with, and I won't get into the whole thing, but the problem with gas burners is that they don't move So if you just have a pan sitting on a gas burner, you're relying on the elements inside the pan to dissipate that energy. Otherwise, it creates hot spots. And that's what ended up burning my hollandaise sauce. So I invented a gas burner that rotates. I was actually at a point where I was waiting for someone to stop by with a check to invest in the company. And my partner at the time, who was a professor, was talking to a rocket scientist about what we were originally proposing. He calls up, he says, we went over the math, it can't happen, and I'm going to bow out, which was totally respectable. It's fine, we're still close. And it was a point I was like, I'm done. I'm not this physics guy, and I don't know how to pull this off, but I just went into deep study and found a way to actually recycle energy in a heating process. So long story short, with that, I got my first introduction to Binghamton University.
Okay.
With the entrepreneurship office, and I got to take a pre-seed.
It was about 10 years
course.
ago.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's amazing when someone else says 10 years ago. It really was.
Yeah.
And I met the most amazing people and started my education on entrepreneurship. With that project, I was a finalist to be on Shark Tank. As well as Make Me a Millionaire Inventor. It's totally stressful waiting, that one Friday night. If we call you, you're in. If we don't call you, you're not in. And then you wake up the next morning like, what time zone were they in? Because I didn't get a call, but that's okay. But what I started learning was that inventors die poor, because I could spend tons of money actually producing all these things that I invent, and I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur. So I started learning in this whole process of GHT and talking with manufacturers. I won grants that gave me money to do all sorts of things. I think in total I received about $168,000 in different grants, either cash or patent help or different employees and such. But you begin to learn this idea, going back to everything is wrong. And if I can come up with a solution, if I have the right team, so feasibility, desirability, to solve something, and I can put together the viability, the money that it takes to actually produce this, I could actually just keep making companies.
Yeah.
Because a company is kind of like an invention. And so as I've done this throughout the years, and believe me, I can't do it without my key partner, Wayne Kerber, who's been my partner in many companies and a mentor of mine. I started to learn what to do, what not to do, to talk to people before you start spending money. Is that something people actually want?
Yeah.
And you just get better and better at it. That now that I'm able to actually design companies on paper before we even touch things, it's just there. And so it's just kind of painting at this point. And you present these things in front of people and say, is this something you want to get into? Is this something you want to invest in? Because I certainly can't run all these companies by myself. I need teams to do them. So I've learned to be able to actually write it on paper. And that's what the business model canvas is about, and learning about these patterns. So, right now, as it sits, I'm starting a restaurant called the West Sider over on the west side of Binghamton. So
I live on the west side of Binghamton, so thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Gourmet hot dogs is going to be the underlying
Beautiful.
theme. It's very exciting. And I'm just constantly trying out new business ideas. So if you think about it, if you were to say, well, I'm going to take $50 every 2 months, put it aside, and I will use that to start a business. Now, obviously, $50, you're not going to go file an LLC because you don't need to. You're not going to make a website. Maybe you can. I know some websites, $12 a year to have a website. But spend $50 and make some prototypes and find out if anyone actually wants these things. Is there a desire for it? Can you afford to actually make it if people want? And so this is just, it's almost, my wife would probably call it a disease at this point, but I just can't stop. I love that. And I probably have 15 different companies in boxes in my basement.
Yeah.
And, someday maybe someone will want to, take it on with me. And if not, that's okay.
So does failure scare you?
One of the lessons, my predecessor, Dan Morey at the Incubator, he got me to read some really great books about entrepreneurship, and it really taught me that we're a community.
Yeah.
And we need to celebrate wins just like we celebrate when our losses happen. So, am I afraid of losses? No, because I know in 3 weeks I'll have another business that I'm probably trying to start anyways. But there's not really losses, I think. I think if you design a business properly, you use proper models, if you can't get it to work, if you can't get your customers to buy it or you can't get your investors to move forward with it, maybe it's the wrong time.
What if they did move forward? What if you spent a bunch of money and then you failed?
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah.
And you know what it does is make you go back and try to figure out, did you actually model it? So
Yeah.
I started with Wayne a medical device company that sanitizes syringes. It's a great device. It was all about the opioid addiction. Opioid epidemic and trying to help people be clean with the syringes. But unfortunately, we didn't know about modeling or customer discovery or any of these other things. So we went and made the device and all the stuff and never actually learned who our customers would be, which, you know, there isn't. In the feasibility, we'd have to go through the FDA. I mean, it was we lost money and time because we just didn't work it out. It doesn't mean that, you know, maybe someday in the future something changes and it pops up, but it taught me that you have to do customer discovery. You have to talk to
So
your
what is
customers.
customer discovery? So walk us through that, because I don't think enough companies in the hemp industry and the cannabis space are doing customer discovery.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they know what customer discovery is or even how to go about it.
Yeah, good question. So as I've said 213 times, it's not actually discovering customers. It's not a sales thing at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's say, you know, you're starting a hemp company and it makes product whatever.
Yeah.
You should try to figure out, maybe start with what sort of groups might be interested in whatever. And then you need to ask them, almost run a blind study. So not a survey. You need to really talk to them in person.
So they can't know that you're trying to start a business.
No.
That's the important
So that's
part, right? Yeah.
exactly the blind study part. So essentially, you need to approach it as a detective and just ask questions. You know, why are you taking hemp products?
Yeah.
You know, have you tried other products? You know, what's the pain? And what you're trying to do is try to figure out, do they really want what I'm offering? And if you mention anything about what you're trying to sell them, then it's influenced, and you're not actually going to get
to bias.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really the start of anything, because what we need to do is find products that people are asking for, as opposed to making something and then finding people that want to buy it.
Now, but so you use this word pain, and I think it's important because the customer might not know enough to ask for it, right? But they still might have pain, right? And not in a literal sense necessarily, right? We talk about CBD and cannabinoid extract products, which do help with pain, but this push towards something that they need. So explain what you mean by pain.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, people don't buy products or services,
Okay.
right? I mean, yes, of course, we're buying something, but what we're actually getting is whatever happens from that purchase.
No, a solution almost.
Yeah, right. We want to fix something. So products and services do one of two things, or maybe both. One is alleviate a pain. So a very simple example would be, I have a headache, I go and take aspirin.
Okay.
That alleviated a pain.
You didn't buy aspirin because you love the aspirin brand and you want to just take aspirin because you saw a great commercial on it.
It doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, this is just like taking some of the CBD products. You know, it's there to alleviate literally a pain, I guess, in that scenario. But a gain might be I'm able to run twice as long. Why does that happen? Well, maybe because my inflammation is down after an aspirin or CBD. I mean, we can keep it in the hemp world. It's very legitimate. So you could look at it as I'm trying to alleviate aches and pains,
Yeah.
which would be a pain category, or a gain category would be, this helps me work out more, or this helps me be able to work a longer day because I just feel more grounded. You know, so people benefit in two different ways from things. And unless you understand both elements, you're probably not serving your customer to the best of your abilities.
Yeah, and it's important to note that because you can come up with a pain and say, oh, people have, arthritis and they need a product for it. But if they already have the product or the product's already readily available, then the pain goes away.
Right.
Right? So it's not just enough to find a need. You have to find that almost, I call it, almost like this push factor, this factor that's going to push someone towards your product, right? So switching gears here a little bit, we're at the end of our episode here, but I do want to get your insights because we hear the word incubator talked a lot especially in Albany when it comes to cannabis, right? And especially when we talk about disadvantaged communities and incubators to help break down some of the barriers in the cannabis space. So being, pretty much, helping run the Koffman Southern Tier Incubator, where do you see incubators fitting into the cannabis, into the rollout of the adult use cannabis industry in New York?
Yeah. I mean, what a great way to end. I think the gist of this interview, or all the things that we discussed, should hopefully boil down to folks, and hopefully they say, I need a foundation.
Yeah.
I need a foundation. Once I have a foundation, I need a direction. What kind of house am I going to build on top of this foundation?
Yeah.
That's what incubators are for.
Yeah.
Without an incubator, basically you just had a bunch of, lumber and nails dropped off in bags at your house, and someone says, build me a castle.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll throw some things together, but I don't really know what I'm doing, or I'm not following, plans that will actually make it safe or successful.
Yeah.
That's what incubation is about. So in the hemp world, first of all, there's all sorts of mentors and such that you can access, but what we need is focused mentorship. We need to teach people how to apply the business model canvas to actually look at how other companies, even if they're not in the hemp world, right? Because if you look at business models, it doesn't necessarily relate to the product. It's really just how you're conducting business and providing to your customers. But how can we use that, again, to compete against the world?
Yeah.
So New York State, we are an agricultural state. We have unbelievable talent when it comes to hemp. We have government leaders that support everything going on. The one thing we're missing, right, the foundation and the direction.
Yeah.
And so I think just like with, all startups, it's required. So a quick statistic for you, the ratio of startups that survive, 1 in 10. Horrible, right? That's as bad as restaurants. The ratio of startups that survive that are involved in incubation, 9 out of 10 survive.
Wow.
Real statistic, you can look it up. It's because they're given that foundation and direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what's key. Otherwise, how are we going to clear the smoke, if you will, pardon the pun, but we need to fight at a much larger scale. We need to compete on an international scale, and whether that's government or the private businesses or the farmers themselves, we need to apply models to these things.
Yeah.
And then we need to innovate those models so that we're better than everyone else.
Yeah. No, that's great insight, Eric. And thanks. So I think enough of our listeners right now, their heads are spinning. So how can they contact you for help?
Great question. You can visit thekoffman.com. So that's TheKoffman. And there you can find information about the incubator, a lot of our key partners in the area, such as the Small Business Development Center out of Binghamton.
Yeah.
But feel free to reach out to us. We have all sorts of programs, and there's nothing more than I love than slapping around a little business model canvases with people. So,
yeah, absolutely.
I invite you to come and enjoy that.
Yeah, and not only did both my businesses start with a business model canvas, but the different evolutions of my business always come down to sitting down with you and mapping it out and breaking it down and employing a little tough love and saying, that's wrong.
It's actually our favorite thing to do.
Exactly, yeah. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of Empire State of Cannabis. This is with Eric Krohn. He's the Director of Incubation Programming at Binghamton University. Subscribe and come back and listen to more next week. And also, CSG can help you too. If you're developing a business, if you're stuck, if you need some help, you can reach out to me personally And I might just refer you over to Eric Krohn, though. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.